The danger is that if Andrew and even Harry and William, if their dispute isn't sorted out, the King's legacy is not going to be all the good work that he's done with the environment, not going to be the good work that he's done out here with the Pope. It's going to be about his brother.
As soon as William's on the throne, I think it's over for Andrew.
Do you think that we're going to see Prince Andrew at either public or even just family royal events in the future?
I don't think we will, no.
Well, it feels too late for Andrew, really, doesn't it?
Who do you think would be the next Duke of York or should be the next Duke of York?
Will anyone want it now?
Matt, do you think that there should be another Duke of York?
I don't think there can be.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive and of course to our new Royal Exclusive YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe here for all the latest royal news. I'm news.com.au's royal reporter Bronte Coy and I'm pleased to be joined by The Sun's royal editor Matt Wilkinson live from Vatican City. And also on location from the King's visit to the Pope is The Sun's royal photographer Arthur Edwards. And here with me in studio is Newsweek's chief royal correspondent Jack Royston. Hello team.
Hello.
Oh!
What a lineup we have today. But to begin with, the top news of the week. What a week it's been for Prince Andrew. He's officially given up the use of his Duke of York title and other honours after what was reportedly very tense meetings with the King and other senior members of the family. Important before we go on, of course, to mention that Prince Andrew has always firmly denied any wrongdoing and all of the allegations against him. But Jack, this bombshell statement from Andrew last week, did it come at the right time? Was it enough?
I think the palace clearly had some idea that things were going to ramp up in terms of the scandal around Prince Andrew. Obviously, they'd have known that Virginia's book was coming. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they had an inkling that there was going to be some more material in the Sunday papers. Obviously, we'd already had some huge bombshell emails, including showing that Andrew had been emailing with Epstein, Sarah Ferguson too. So they clearly knew that more was coming and something needed to be done. So it was definitely a good idea to do something. But the reason why they did not actually manage to head off the crisis at all, really, is I think the framing in that statement from Prince Andrew was all wrong for the moment. So he voluntarily gave up the use of his titles, which always ran the risk of being seen as purely symbolic and meaningless in reality, because obviously he retains those titles. But what added to that is the explanation given was that he was doing it to avoid being a distraction to the good work of the monarchy and that he has always done his duty. And that is absolutely not how the public see this. The public do not see Andrew as a man who's always done his duty, and they don't see this as about distracting from the monarchy. They see this as being about a woman who is no longer with us, Virginia, who is getting an opportunity to tell her story about 6 odd months after her death. And whose allegations have never properly been tested in court. And what the public wanted to see from Andrew was contrition, was some understanding of the fact that his friendship with Epstein was morally wrong. We now know that he continued contact with Epstein after the point he told Emily Maitlis, that he had flown all the way to New York specifically to break off that friendship. And he even went as far as telling Emily Maitlis in 2019 in his car crash Newsnight interview, I had no contact with Epstein after that point. So it was unambiguous. There was no wriggle room, there was no vagueness. He said he had no contact, and we now know that in February 2011, he sent Epstein an email saying, I'm more worried about how this is affecting you. Don't worry about me. I'm more worried about you. We're in this together. We'll have to rise above it and we'll play again soon. And that email came the day after Virginia's first big newspaper interview, which ran over 3,600 words. And in it, she described how she was sexually abused as a child by a friend of the family, she said at that time. And she had to live homeless from age 11. She had sex with men not for money at that time, but for food. And that she was then abused by Jeffrey Epstein and had to take Xanax to numb the pain. And Andrew, that was the first publication of the photo of Andrew with his arm around her waist. And Andrew came off the back of that email, of that story, and sent Epstein this email saying, I'm more worried about you.
Yeah, and as you mentioned in Virginia's book, it makes for really harrowing reading, all those details in there. To broaden out the story for one moment and moving off Andrew just briefly, of course we know now that Sarah Ferguson, his ex-wife, is also going to give up the use of her Duchess of York title. But Matt, I'm curious, how do Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie fit in with all of this? What will happen with them? What do we know about their role in all of this?
Well, Jack was just talking there about removing the titles. And the problem was that the palace were faced that they wanted to take some kind of action against Prince Andrew. It was a febrile atmosphere, to be quite frank, after those emails, and they knew they had to do something. But by actually officially removing the Duke of York titles, it had repercussions on the girls. And the feeling, I understand, is that they didn't particularly want to punish Beatrice and Eugenie for sins of their father. So by asking Sarah and Andrew to give up their titles and not use them, then it didn't have implications on them, which I think is kind of fair. They're not to blame in everything that's happened here, but they are inextricably linked. And we have seen Beatrice go into the house. She's come out. She looked quite stressed, to be quite frank, in the photo that we've seen. We know they are a unit. I think Sarah's called them the quad or the squad. They're a group of four, and they're very, very close. And it does. And although I do feel a lot of sympathy for Beatrice and Eugenie, you've got to remember, when we look at that lease, you might talk about it a little bit later, but I got hold of the lease this week and I read it. They get Royal Lodge if Andrew was to pass, or if he was to pass it on. Okay, it's the children and his widow. He doesn't have a widow, but it goes to the children. So they are inextricably linked to Beatrice and Eugenie, and I have an awful lot of sympathy for them. But as this family four unit, they've got to be involved in all the repercussions that are heading towards Andrew.
Absolutely. And just recently, I mean, there's been so many developments in this story as the week's gone on. And at the top of the show, I mentioned Royal Lodge, as you just have then. What do you think will happen with that and with everything we've seen this week? There's a push to evict Prince Andrew from there. What do you think is going to be going on in regards to the home?
There's 100% a push to get Andrew out of Royal Lodge, and they've made no secret of it in the last couple of years. They've, wanting to give him Frogmore, give him Frogmore Cottage, move around the corner, make it a lot easier. They don't like, the palace do not like the appearance of a disgraced ex-duke now living up in a huge 31-room mansion. They want him out. They can't get him out because we can see the lease. It's his lease. He has it for 75 years, but they can pull certain levers. So they can persuade him. And look, Andrew was persuaded, convinced maybe, or dragged kicking and screaming to give up his York title. He could be dragged kicking and screaming to make the right decision and leave Royal Lodge, but they can't force him to leave because he's got a cast iron lease. So I think watch this space on Royal Lodge. I don't think that's going to go away, but maybe at some stage I think Andrew might go away from Royal Lodge. But I think the palace will keep on pushing this.
Well, one thing that has already happened is that I believe Andrew's coat of arms banner has been taken down at Windsor Castle. Matt, you reported on this. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this is another thing that Andrew gave up. He gave up the being a Knight of the Garter. And this is the most chivalric order in the UK. It goes back to the Knights of the Round Table in King Arthur. And I think in 2006, he was given a member of the order. He hasn't appeared at this event every June since 2019. It's quite a fascinating thing to see, actually. You see all the royals, all these people that have been in the order walking down to St George's Chapel, and it's a really great day. As I say, it's therefore the highest chivalric order, and there have been calls for him to be stripped, but he gave up his knighthood. And then this week we got a picture of his banner, which is a huge glamorous flag and a little coronet next to Prince William's. It's been up there, but it got removed this week, and we published today saying that it's another humiliation for Andrew that it's actually been removed. The interesting thing here is that you would normally need a king's warrant, or you would normally need to be guilty of high treason for this to be removed, but it's just been quietly, not so quietly, but it's been taken down without any of these kind of actions because they just thought it was a little bit inappropriate for his order to be hanging there.
And Arthur, you've been covering royal stories for a very long time. Do you think that we're going to see Prince Andrew at either public or even just family royal events in the future?
I don't think we will, no. I think we may see him at family events at Christmas time, of course, when all families should be together. And obviously, he's the king's brother and the king cares about him. I mean, he must. But, Jack going on about Andrew's never done his duty. You forget he served in this country. He served in the war, in Falklands War. He risked his life for this country. And I was at Portsmouth when he came back. And crowds were huge and he was a hero. So he did his duty. And I went on many tours with him.
Matt, obviously Andrew is the king's brother. Much is made of that when we do see him at family events. How do you think the king is feeling about all this week?
Well, I've been discussing this week because privately here in Vatican City, we have a lot of conversations about this, as you imagine. We don't quite know what the king thinks. This is the problem. We know what the palace think. We know what Andrew thinks because we've had statements, we've had kind of, behind the scenes kind of, conversations. But the king hasn't actually actively come out and said anything. I think it would be very difficult for Charles I think it is proving very difficult for Charles to act on his brother. I think that he doesn't like confrontation. I think it's rather telling that it was a phone call rather than the late Queen when she removed all the titles from Prince Andrew. She actually summoned him for a face-to-face meeting at Windsor Castle. So I think the King actually finds it incredibly difficult. We'll talk about it a little bit later, maybe. We're in the Vatican City for a huge, huge event for the King, really, really important for the King and for the Church of England and the Catholic Church. And yet he's having to deal with his brother. It's always the family issues, I find, that really, really bring the royal family down. It's always the kind of interaction between brothers, between husbands and wives, that really cause a problem. And I genuinely think that the King would much rather just do his job, do his duty, be a king, than rather have to sit down and have to sort out his brother's house, sort out his brother's titles. I actually think that he shouldn't have to. It should be up to Andrew to sort out his house and Andrew to sort out his titles. So I feel very sorry for the King that he's in this position.
And we will get onto this hugely historic visit that the King has been on, and we're very much looking forward to it. But unfortunately, this distraction of Andrew does continue for a little bit longer. Jack, another key player in all of this that we keep hearing about is Prince William. It's been long reported that he has pushed for a harder stance when it comes to his uncle. What do you think we will see when Prince William is the one on the throne?
As soon as William's on the throne, I think it's over for Andrew. But I think there's a more pressing issue around, William taking a tougher stance right now, because it's now being openly discussed in Whitehall. We had the Newsnight political editor this week saying his Whitehall sources are saying, "Don't worry, William's on the case." And now that is very interesting constitutionally, because King Charles is the head of the monarchy. But the government is under huge pressure to take action here. And that is another thing that is coming back. Cabinet Minister's briefing off the record that more needs to be done. And the palace have been too slow. The political atmosphere is becoming just as febrile in Britain as the public atmosphere. And the word in Whitehall is that William is the man who is ready to take the bull by the horns and get this under control. And so that is very interesting constitutionally, if there are people in government who feel that they need to go to the next in line in order to resolve a major crisis that is starting to arrive on the doorstep of Downing Street, because this is spreading out the palace. This is not just a problem for the King anymore. And Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, asked during PMQs, is it time for a select committee inquiry into Royal Lodge, into Andrew's finances? And he tacked on the end, should Prince Andrew be dragged in front of that inquiry to give evidence? And Keir Starmer's response, the Prime Minister's response, was vague about which question he was answering, but he said he wanted that to happen. He may just have been confining his answer to the inquiry, but there is obviously the potential, if you have a royal family member giving evidence about a scandal to a parliamentary inquiry, that has never happened before. We are in completely uncharted territory.
Absolutely. And to
your it's interesting what Jack was saying there about infecting other areas. I think it's a really interesting point. If it's infecting politics, that it's getting out of the King's control. I would say that Ed Davey's probably the least fearsome politician, the least scary person that I would want to demand me to come in front of a select committee, the least authoritative leader that we have in this country of any political party currently quite now. But it's a really important point there, and that makes this a worse crisis for the King. He has worked, he has taken action, but if it leaves his control and ends up in politics, in House of Parliament or in the courts, then he is in a lot of trouble.
And just on Jack's earlier point about the fact that we're hearing reports about Prince William's stance, even though he isn't the King, is this creating, from what you know, is this creating another issue whereby Prince William and the King may be seen not to be in lockstep as they've said they are, or what do you know about this?
I think me and Arthur are actually in lockstep about this. We spent a few days out here in Vatican City, and it's all we talk about. But I think we're in lockstep that I think the King and William are in agreement. I think they are doing this together. I think some of the briefings that's come out talking that he wouldn't, Arthur will have his opinion on this, but I think that some of the discussions about that he won't invite to the coronation and he won't do X, Y, and Z. I think that's peripheral at the moment. I don't think we're at that stage. But no, I think that they're a good unit, and King and William are a complete agreement on what to do with Andrew.
Moving on, but only a little bit, I want to focus specifically on the posthumous memoir by Virginia Giuffre, which was released this week. As most would know, and as I mentioned earlier, Virginia has alleged that she had 3 sexual encounters with Andrew over the years, one when she was just 17 years old, while being sex trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. Again, Prince Andrew has firmly denied these allegations, but her book, which is released after her tragic death earlier this year, it delves into all of this in excruciating detail and makes for really, obviously, difficult reading. Among the claims, she says that Andrew was entitled, quote, as if he believed having sex with her was his birthright. Jack, this book is absolutely damning for Andrew. Do you think that we're going to see him attempt to defend himself again, as we did 6 years ago?
I don't think we will. I think he has no doubt either realised or had impressed on him that his efforts to defend himself in the past went horribly, horribly wrong. And if anything, the public came away feeling like they'd seen enough after hearing some of his absurd excuses and alibis and denials. So I don't think we'll see him defend himself again. But I mean, one key thing about the book, a lot of the actual passages about Andrew are very similar to stuff that journalists have engaged with before, because she wrote a book that was never published and it was included in court filings in America. So I had read, virtually word for word some of those passages already, but the public won't have done. And the other new thing about this is because they'll be reading her story in totality, they will begin with her abuse, which she says she experienced at the hands of her father, which he denies, but also, her harrowing childhood. And then they get onto her being groomed by Epstein and of the abuse by him. And then they have already they've already digested all of that by the time they arrive with Andrew. And so one thing that they will be in absolutely no uncertain terms about by the time they reach the Andrew passages is who Virginia was to Epstein. And if some people believe that the photo of Andrew with his arm around Virginia's waist is fake. I am not in that camp. Some people believe that. But if you believe that photo, then you have to ask yourself the question, why on earth would Epstein and Maxwell, and Ghislaine Maxwell, his ex-girlfriend, currently serving 20 years for sex trafficking, why would they fly Virginia all the way to London to meet Andrew? What possible reason could they have had for wanting to do that? In which case, one striking thing about Andrew's interview with Emily Maitlis in 2019 is he never described any attempt by Epstein and Maxwell to lure him into a compromising position. He just said it was all untrue. But, we know who Epstein is. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted. Andrew's never been convicted. Maxwell has. She's doing 20 years. The allegations against Epstein have been proven true via Ghislaine Maxwell's trial.
And before we move on from this topic, just a last point on this. Matt, is there anything that Andrew can do from here? Should he be complying with an investigation? Should he be doing something as a gesture of remorse or contrition? Is there anything for Andrew at this point?
Well, it feels too late for Andrew, really, doesn't it? I mean, he's had so many opportunities over the last 15, 20. I keep going back thinking, was it 2001 was the allegation, or when he was meant to have been with Virginia. This is a long period of time and he's had many, many opportunities. I think they are definitely running out. The concern that I have is what he has said to the royal family in the past. He must have had conversations with the king. He must have, they must have asked him years ago, what is this all about, Andrew? Who is this Virginia? Who is this Jeffrey Epstein? He must have had conversations with his family. Was he being truthful the whole time? Is he sticking to his story the whole time? Would he change his story? I don't know what he can do. I would hate to advise him because he's made so many errors in the past. I think he just needs to avoid scandal because we've got a king working hard, Prince William working hard, and we need him to stop dropping the ball if the royal family is going to succeed.
Yeah, with keeping the story straight. I mean, we've been given different versions of the story now as opposed to what he told Emily Maitlis, and you'd have to assume that what he said in that interview is also what he told the royal family in terms of his contact with Jeffrey Epstein. But you've mentioned the King's good work, and we will move on to that because it has been a really significant week for the King and the Queen, who are in Vatican City with both of you in lockstep over there, which we love to see. So, Matt, the King is the first British monarch to pray with the Pope in centuries. You were there. Can you tell me about the significance of the moment?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I mean, we weren't there. We were locked out. There was a certain rules here in Vatican where only the Vatican media were allowed in, which was we had to watch on television outside. But no, it was a wonderful opportunity, and I think we were meant to come in May or April time, but it was cancelled because Pope Francis was ill. And I tell you what, can I pass this question to Arthur? Because when I said that I wasn't in the Sistine Chapel when the King and Pope prayed together and the significance of it, I think somebody was, weren't they, Arthur?
I was, yeah. I was the king invited me in to go, and it was moving. I mean, very moving. And of course, this hasn't happened since before the Reformation. And you know, I spoke to Cardinal Nichols about this as well, and he said this is so important. You know, this is a part of the King's legacy, and you know, I was so impressed with the way the Pope and the King were chatting together all the time, and as Cardinal Nichols said, you know, they speak the same language, and they never stopped talking, and they embraced each other, and there was a great feeling of mutual respect there, and of course the King. You know, he's wanted to be defender of all faiths. And, you know, the week before he was at a synagogue in Manchester, comforting people there. And I've been with him in mosques in the Middle East and temples in India, Sikh temples where he's prayed with the people there. He's a very, very spiritual man. And this might bring the two churches together, the Church of England and the Catholic Church, which was destroyed by Henry VIII just because he couldn't divorce one of his wives. And, you know, such a small thing, but a big schism. And I think the King's doing something about that with the Pope. And hopefully there can be some reunification. And that's what it's about. And as far as I was concerned, being there and then meeting the Pope afterwards was just so moving. And I felt so important it was, you know, and they were talking about Prince Andrew all morning, and that's another thing that's going to go into the past, and we're going to forget about, we forgot the MP's expenses, we forgot Andrew's book and Meghan's interview with Oprah Winfrey. This is so important what the King's trying to do, the work he's trying to do to sort of embrace religions where wars are over religions, you know, wars are always over religions, it seems, you know, if it's not the Jews and the Arabs, it's other people fighting each other. And the King, he's just doing something about it, and he's trying to make, I think, the world a better place. And when I saw them talking, you know, both old men, but both people that cared so much about their faith, and I was very moved, and I must say, it will stick with me for the rest of my life. And I think I'm more interested in that than I am all this kick Andrew out of his house. You know.
On that note, Arthur, it is very special hearing you talk about this visit that you're on, because you did meet the Pope. That is an incredible moment for you also. And I'm interested because you have, as I mentioned, you've been on the royal beat for so many decades. You've seen so many incredible things in this space. How does this compare? How does this visit rank in the top list of all of your big royal coverage moments?
Well, the first time I had the courage to speak to the Pope, when I met Benedict, you know, he was charming, but it was just a handshake. When I met Pope Francis, he was charming because the King gave me a great introduction, and I felt a bit embarrassed by it actually. But Pope Francis was smiling all the way through it, which was lovely. But Leo, of course, Pope Leo, he speaks English, King was telling him I'd been working with him for many years, and I said over 40 years, and the Pope said, and he smiled at me, and then I said, you know, look, good luck to you, you know. Now would just say good luck to him, but you know, afterwards I spoke to Archbishop Nichols about that, and he said that was the best thing you could say, because he's got a really tough job, and so has the King, and the King's got a tough job, Pope's got a tough job, but they're doing something about it. They're trying to make a difference, and that's what gave me great feeling when I walked out of there. I felt really, really moved, and felt how the King must have felt, you know, when he walked out of there. He must have felt what he'd come to Rome for, he'd achieved, and that was something special.
It's wonderful to get both your insights from being there. It's so thank you so much, by the way, for making the time. Before we move on to our quickfire questions, one last thing. Obviously, despite Andrew's statement last Friday about not wanting to distract, it has distracted in terms, particularly here in the UK. What do you think? How do you think the King has gone at handling this while he's been stepping out with this really important visit? How do you think he's been handling, you know, the fact that it is a distraction?
I think that the palace are currently stuck in a kind of old school royal perspective on this, and that actually they need to jump into the 21st century, and what public institutions, private companies all over the world, and Britain, America, you know, organizations dealing with Harvey Weinstein, dealing with Jimmy Savile at the BBC, what they do is they give a clear expression of expectations and values, which is designed to ensure that things like this never happen again. And so that is what I think the king needs to do. I think he needs to give a positive statement saying that the royal family has a zero tolerance policy on trafficking and child exploitation. I mean, obviously it does, because Queen Camilla campaigns on rape, and this scandal is so much more famous, unfortunately, than the work Camilla does through her charities. So what the king needs to do is, in his words, not in Andrew's, but as Matt said earlier, he needs to give a statement saying the royal family has a zero tolerance policy for child exploitation and sex trafficking. And Andrew, his friend, he can say, there's nothing to stop him saying, the monarchy cannot definitively adjudicate on whether Virginia's allegations are true. They can't. That's down to a jury. But what they can do is say that Andrew's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein was immoral. He maintained that friendship knowing Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted paedophile. He then misled the public about that, and that fails to meet the monarchy and the royal family's moral standards. Andrew has definitively done something that is immoral, and that is the reason why he's had to step back from public life. And that is the reason he can't use his titles. And that is the reason why this has turned into a massive crisis, not just a scandal, but a crisis. And it's not simply about stopping him from distracting from the good work of the monarchy, because the victims matter, and because the issues matter, and because protecting future victims matters, and protecting, and showing victims of, even if you're not an Epstein victim, showing victims of sexual abuse in general that they matter is hugely, hugely important.
Could I just say something? Because I know you'll have to do. I know how difficult it is sitting in that chair, Bronte. I know. Just a quick one. We were talking there about distracting from the royal family, and yet we're right. We are in Vatican City, and you're in this bubble, and it's absolutely amazing. But at some stage, we're going to start talking about the legacy of the king. We're going to start talking about what he's left behind, what his reign was like. Not immediately, but at some stage. And the danger is this thing with the Pope, as Arthur's pointed out there, was so important between the two religions. 500 years of history. First time they prayed together about ending kind of conflict around the world. It was so important for Charles's legacy. He's such a spiritual man. The fear is, or the danger is, that if Andrew and even Harry and William, if their dispute isn't sorted out, the king's legacy is not going to be all the good work that he's done with the environment, not going to be the good work that he's done out here with the Pope. It's going to be about his brother. And if it just keeps on rumbling and rumbling on, it's not only going to distract from the royal family now, it's going to distract from how we remember King Charles's reign. And that is really worrying for him.
I couldn't agree more. That was really, really well said. All fantastic insights on, a very sensitive and difficult topic at times, but it's also been so wonderful, as I said, hearing all about what's been happening in Vatican City amid all the drama back home. It's all waiting for you, though, when you come back.
He's been in there to meet the Pope. I've just been standing outside in the cold.
Well, we will now move on to something that is much lighter. We're going to talk about the quickfire questions. Matt, this is fun. Normally it's you asking us. You're going to get it this time. This is exciting.
Oh, no.
Are you nervous?
Okay. Yeah.
Don't worry, it's very friendly today. Not like when you do it. So, first up, there are rumours of Meghan's imminent makeup line launch. So, given what we're hearing about that, which royal would you buy your makeup from?
Are you asking me?
Well, any of you.
Well, it's got to be Kate, hasn't it? But I mean, obviously, I never say no to hair and makeup when I come into the studio. So I would buy my makeup from Kate.
Because I was wondering if you'd all deny that you use it, but I'm here with the makeup. I see you all in the makeup room before the show.
I deny nothing. I'm straight in there.
Well, surely the viewers could see now when they see me and Arthur when we haven't had makeup on. This is what we really look like.
I'm never going to have makeup unless we go to work on your show, Matt. Then we need it, of course. You've got to look out very bad.
Yeah, so quite frankly, I'll take makeup from anyone that I could carry around on tours, so I could actually quickly just put on a little whoever wants to give me a little kind of travel kit, I'll take.
I wish people could see your makeup kit, Matt. It's enormous. Gosh, before the show, it's an hour before we even get in here. Arthur, go on, sorry.
But it's not as big as your makeup kit, Bronte. It's always got some glamorous. So I imagine you better answer the question, not us. Who would you want to have your makeup done? Because personally, I don't use makeup, but
I've got to be honest. I think the Princess of Wales, she's always got immaculate makeup, no matter where she is, and she's always in these conditions as well, where it's really lasting. So good for her. She's out there and rainy days, windy days, and it's all staying perfectly intact. So there we go. All right. Next up, which royal family member would you love to see on Celebrity Traitors?
Do you know what? I think Princess Anne could be a dark horse on Celebrity Traitors. I think she would. I think she would be a phenomenal traitor. I don't think anyone would weed her out. I think she'd be there in the final.
Love that. That's a good one.
Well, it's a popularity contest, isn't it? The traitors. It's the most popular. If you're unpopular, you get voted out first. So the most popular are William and Catherine. So you put them in, they'd win.
Very good. Yeah, it's good. It's a good strategy, Matt. Very good.
I think Catherine will win anything. Yeah, anything. So I agree with Matt. I think Catherine would be the one for traitors. I mean, no one would be too scared to chuck her out because she's so perfect.
If that's the mentality, I would love to have seen the late Queen on there.
Yeah,
can you imagine?
100%,
And as the traitor as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, last of all, the royal family now has a spare title sort of going around. Well, not officially, but the Duke of York has obviously given up the use of that title. Who do you think, if that is officially relinquished or officially stripped, who do you think would be the next Duke of York or should be the next Duke of York?
Well, the obvious answer would be Louis. I mean, once upon a time, you'd have said Harry, as you know, the Duke of York was traditionally the next in line, the spare rather. So you have the Prince of Wales and then you have the Duke of York. But I mean, will anyone want it now? It's kind of sullied, sadly, because it's a title that goes back through history. And the Duke of York was always, the reason we have that nursery around Grand Old Duke of York, it had 10,000 men, because it has huge military history attached to it as well.
Matt, do you think that there should be another Duke of York?
I don't think there can be. I really don't think in living memory, I don't think it's so tainted. I mean, we did a story the other week about a pub that's removed its Duke of York sign. I don't think people want to be associated with Duke of York. It's a really historical title. I mean, Jack just pointed out there about how many years it's been going back, but also the late Queen gave it to Andrew because it was her father's title. It was King George VI had the Duke of York title. So I think we'll be looking for more cities across the UK for more kind of dukedom names. I can't see anyone that is alive at the moment that would even want the Duke of York title.
Arthur, do you agree, or do you think Prince Louis should get the title?
I think the Duke of York title's finished. Yeah, I don't think we'll probably see it in our lifetimes anyway. I think it's over. Yeah, I think it's just every time someone says I'm the Duke of York, they say, oh yeah, just like the last Duke of York. I mean, it would be. I just think it's over. No, I don't think anyone wants it.
Certainly been tainted for the time being. Thank you all so much for your time. As I said, it's been fantastic hearing about everything from Vatican City amid a dramatic week back home. Jack, thank you so much for your insights, and it's been just a wonderful discussion. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bronte. I'll be back there next week.
We'll see. That's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments as usual, and remember to subscribe to us here on our new Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news. See you next week.